Hello and welcome to Everyday Creative. It is great to see you again today. I'm excited to be bringing you another video, and this one is going to be about composite images, particularly in Photoshop. And we're going to be breaking down how I got from this image here to this image. Hold on. Okay, to this image. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so we're here in Lightroom, and one of the things that I really want this channel to be about is that you don't have to be perfect and you don't have to know what you're doing to give it a shot. So I'm definitely no expert at this kind of thing, and this photo is, I'm just gonna put it out there, it's a little bit out of focus, but throughout this process, at the end of it, it's not so much of an issue that it's slightly out of focus, but there's a few things that I did along the way that helped with that. So this isn't gonna be me going through and doing all the editing, it's more so just sort of breaking it down and talking about the different things that I did to sort of give you a bit of an idea of what you could also do with a similar idea, some sort of composite image of your own. So starting in Lightroom, this is the image that I had to start with, and after doing all of my editing in Lightroom, this is what I came up with. Because I was obviously going for a nighttime image, I obviously needed to make it more blue. Typically nighttime is, if you know much about like color temperature and that sort of thing, a warm sunny day is going to be more orange, and at night the moon is more blue and that sort of thing. So I've obviously changed the temperature here, I've taken that right down into the blues. I increased the vibrance and saturation a little bit. I'm pretty sure I put one of my presets on it and then adjusted the presets. You can see I've tweaked a lot here in the HSL panel, hue, saturation, luminance, and yeah, made a few changes in the highlights. But yeah, it hasn't been any major changes too much in Lightroom. So now if we move from Lightroom to Photoshop, obviously taking this photo into Photoshop, and we're gonna break down what I did there. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and this is the image that I obviously started with when I opened up Photoshop. Now this is the finished product that I got to in the end, and there's also a couple of variations here in that I had one that had the fireflies and I had one that had fog. So if I just turn off some layers here, just got to find the fireflies. So that's the fireflies layer, and we had a fog layer as well that sort of had a bit of a different vibe to it. The fog layer, that image was not really the image that I ended up going for or liking as much. So this is the one that I'm going to break down more for you. Now there's an awful lot of layers here, so this is probably going to get fairly complicated as I go through. We'll just sort of go through the layers and I'll try and explain it the best I can as we go. So this is actually one of the last things I did in my process, but it's fairly important, and it was something that definitely needed to happen to sell the finished image. So it was about removing all of this white from up in the sky here, which you wouldn't normally get an overexposed sky if it was nighttime. So what I did was I put in a couple of layers, so you can sort of see these two layers without a layer over top. It looks kind of messy, but essentially it's like a dark blue layer here and then a sky layer. And then I put the original layer, the background layer, back over top because that's background copy, over top of that again. And it looks a little messy there, but essentially it was just to sort of get rid of that straight white in the sky. And by the end, with all the other layers, you don't really notice this little bit of a weird artifacting around here. But to do that, there was some blend if and that sort of thing. I recommend looking at some tutorials if you're not sure about blend if and that sort of thing. But yeah, within these blending options, it's like blend if this layer is very bright, essentially. So if the layer was bright, then it needed to blend with the bottom layer. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I would recommend looking at tutorials from Pix Imperfect on YouTube. Such a good channel to watch. I would definitely recommend checking that out if you want to learn more about Photoshop and photo editing. So the next thing I did was added some more blue layers, some fill, because even though I'd already made it more blue in the temperature, I still needed more blue over top of everything to get it towards that nighttime look. So this next layer, I would definitely recommend naming your layers so when you're going back through, you know what it is. I didn't name this one, so that's, you know, I didn't know what it was until I clicked on it. But essentially this was sort of tidying up around her face a little bit, making it a little sharper and a little more detailed, trying to fix that missed focus from when I took the photo. So the next thing after that was putting in some extra light rays. Now, I had someone comment when I was sort of looking for some feedback on this image that would the moon cast rays at night because this is supposed to be moonlight? And I mean, there's definitely some truth that it wouldn't cast rays that sharp, I don't think. But I think the idea is that there's a little bit of fog in this forest, it's a little bit misty, and that it's a very bright full moon. But I mean, technically it might not cast rays that bright, but when you're creating sort of photo composites and images like this, you just need to do what feels right for you. I mean, at least try it and see how it looks, and then, you know, you get a bit of feedback as well. But if you feel like that's what it needs to do, if you feel like that looks right, then definitely go with it. After that, I added more blue to those rays because that's just on that image layer there. Again, some more blue. And then after that, we had some shadows. Now this was really to add to the darkness, to the night feel, because, you know, if it's supposed to be nighttime, the shadows on the trees should be a lot darker. So that's what that was. It was pretty much just a black layer, just painted on over top of the trees. The next thing we had was a color lookup table, which was moonlight, is just adding that extra bit of moonlight, so just more on top of that blue, but it's going over top of all of those layers to sort of tie it all together. This next layer was actually one of the first things that I did, but it was adding this lantern in to her hand. Now you can see that I've sort of cut it around her hand a little bit here so that it actually looks like it goes through the hand. Obviously when you zoom in, the lantern doesn't look exactly right, but that's one of the beauties of doing these kind of images, is that you can fix that sort of thing later on with more layers and blending and that sort of thing. And as well, it's not so much the details, like if you zoom into the image, it's more so how it looks overall. So within this layer, this is all my fireflies. So I'll just turn this on. So this was essentially, I think, a brush that had different specs on it. And then I put some directional blur and that sort of thing on these as well. So the directional blur is, I think, this layer, yeah. So I duplicated this layer here and then put some directional blur on it to make the fireflies look like they were moving. Okay, so this next part is where I started painting in some light from the lantern to make it sort of fit and blend in. So if we add that, that's sort of a light on the ground. Then I think that was another duplicate of that, just sort of adding a little bit more. So this is where you really need to think about if you're adding something like light to a scene or certain objects to a scene, is like, how is that going to impact what's around it? So if she's holding a lantern, then obviously that should be casting light onto her as well. So this is one of the layers that does that. I'll just zoom in a little. So this is essentially me just painting in extra light onto her using overlay. So yeah, it's sort of just giving her an extra little bit of light. So this next layer was more light again, because you kind of, when I'm doing this sort of thing, I like to add multiple layers so I'm not altering a layer that I'm already happy with, I guess. And the thing is, you can always adjust then the opacity of the separate layers, especially if you're doing, say, a wider area with one of the layers or something like that. So this, I think, is again just another one of those, except this is color. So this is changing the color a little bit. I'm not sure if you can really see that making much difference. Again, some of these changes are super subtle. Again, some of these are so subtle that you really can't even see what's happening. Then we've got some hard light. I remember what this one is. Yeah, so this is more like a sharp light being cast from the lantern that I painted in. This layer is just on her lips. a little bit of glow and shine on her lips from the lantern. And then I think this one again is a little bit more on the lips, a little bit of shine from the lantern. I'm not sure what these ones are. No, I still don't know what that one does. It's been a while since I did this edit. Okay, and then another one on the lips, brightening that up again. I've got another hard light one. This is on the arm there. It's not the best painting I've ever done. Again, I'm not an expert at this. I guess I just wanted to make this breakdown to sort of inspire you of what you can do with a lot of layers in a little bit of time. I mean, a decent amount of time. And yeah, this is more light on her again, sort of around the edges of her hair and that sort of thing. Again, like when you zoom in, it doesn't look as good as when it's the overall finished image. That's the layer on top of the lantern, sort of casting some brightness. I'm gonna zoom back out. So this next layer is adding a little bit more shadow to the trees, as well as a little bit of light from the lantern hitting that tree there. You can see sort of everything's in place on this image. The final touch was another curves layer just to really tie it all together under one curves layer and really sell that moonlight sort of mystical feeling. So that obviously is like a big change right there. You can see I've adjusted the blues and the greens and also the whites. I've taken a lot out of the highlights in that layer. So yeah, there obviously was the other layer, the fog layer in there. But for me, there was a few different layers turned on and off for that particular one. For me, I preferred the mystical sort of fairy tale image as a finished product. And again, that's just kind of one of those personal preference things. Let me know which one you prefer though out of the two images. I'll put them up on the screen. So I had the mystical kind of fantasy one and then a little bit more of a gloomy, misty forest sort of thing. So yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you liked that. Please let me know if you'd like to see me edit a photo from start to finish, whether that's something like this, a composite image, or even any other image, whether that's landscape or perhaps just a general person fashion kind of shoot photo. I'd be totally happy to do that, to record that editing process from Lightroom through to Photoshop and that finished product. And all the different things that I like to do and I guess just that whole process. So yeah, if you'd be interested in seeing that or any other videos, if you've got any other suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. If you did like this video, please leave a like, and if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell. And I'm running out of things to say, so that must mean that it really is the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.